welcome to you, Mr. Menon. Thank you so much for taking our time. I know we would have loved to have you do the overview, but I thought the interactive session is what we thought would be best. Mr. Singh just put together, a lot of points on how the industry has been, the positive outlook that we can see here, the enthusiasm is there, Indian traveler is most sought after. What in your view, how's the industry fared in the last 1 year? How would you, put it, and what has your impression been?
So, Navneet, thank you for having me here today. Appreciate it. I think Mr. Arvind Singh just made my life 100% easier. He's quoted all the statistics, but look, I think in retrospect, when we look back at it, the disruption has been an opportunity rather than being viewed as something that ravaged us and we didn't know what was going to happen. So if I look back at the last 2 years, I think we've come out very well out of it. As an industry, despite all the challenges, despite everything, if you look at the performance of the travel companies, I think it's been outstanding. And it's partly because we re-engineered ourselves, re-engineered costs, to be specific. I'm sorry, I'm sounding a little more like a manager rather than an expert in travel. So, but we re-engineered costs ourselves, and I'm sure pretty much everybody, industry-wise, has done the same thing. So I think we've come out of it much leaner. You know, there is a saying in when you run a company or when you manage something, that when the going is good, you put on weight. When the going is bad, you lose the weight. So that's precisely what we did. And I think that we have progressed to a point where we can say that our businesses have recovered. Yes, some haven't, but the prospects look very good.
That's heartening to hear. In fact, as you mentioned, there's a lot of baggage that the companies carried, perhaps, because during COVID, there's practically no movement, or it was limited to one's fare. What are the other challenges, in your view, that must have hit the companies and the growth, at that point, which you've been able to overcome now?
So, Navneet, I think we are facing a whole new set of challenges, challenges that we had never witnessed before. To start with, the disruption in the supply chain, which has resulted in a variety of issues. I won't go into the detail of the disruption, but look at it from higher input costs, higher costs of air travel, the geopolitical issues that have come up. So the reality is that there will always be challenges. We're not new to this, except that the set of challenges are new. But having said that, I want to touch on a point that Mr. Arvind Singh talked about, is how tourism has recovered. And I just want to quote one study, which is the McKinsey study, which came out at the beginning of last month, where they talk of tourism, outbound tourism. And when I say outbound tourism, don't get me wrong, I'm talking about the minute you leave the whole house, you're going out. Is expected to grow from what it is, 13 million today, to 80 or 90 million. Even if I don't take that number and I discount it, we're still talking about 3x growth in terms of what we see. So despite the challenges, we've got a very vibrant environment in this industry, and that's reflected across hospitality, across other related industries also. So my expectation is that we're going to continue to see this vibrancy for some time to come, despite the challenges.
India is the most sought after market. Practically everybody wants an Indian traveler to be there, for whatever that's MICE or it's wedding or other things. Is this boom in travel real? Do you think, despite the price challenges that are there, like you mentioned, with prices going up, the Indians are still traveling. How do you foresee it in the coming times?
So if you asked me a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to give you an answer because I wouldn't have been sure as to this thing. I think the period of revenge, as people call it, is long over. I think we're now in a period of sustainable travel that is coming from change in consumer behavior. I mean, get onto any flight, be it international or domestic, and you'll be lucky if you found 1 or 2 spare seats, empty seats. The reality is that despite capacity constraints that airlines are facing today, you see they're flying to most places. There are more people flying. I mean, I was amazed. 450,000 people getting on or off an aircraft in India today on a single day. These are numbers that sort of inspire us to believe that this is a long-term trend that we are in. Go back to the India growth story and you talk of whether we were at 1 trillion, we're at 4 trillion today, and we're moving towards the 5 trillion number. I think the trickle-down effect has been present for quite some time, and we're now witnessing it. Thanks to the disruption of the pandemic, I actually believe consumer behavior has actually helped us, and that will continue to sustain.
That's good to hear, coming from you. In terms of like when we're talking about, again, numbers, what about the inbound tourism or domestic tourism? How do you think that's shaping up? We have a lot more new destinations, the government's working hard. What is your...
So, as Mr. Arvind Singh said, domestic tourism is booming, whichever form, whether you look at road transport, whether you look at air, cruises, everything is happening. I mean, to talk about cruises, today we have 2 cruise liners plying the coast of India. Many people have tried in the past and failed, but this is a success story. So, I think cruises is one form. If I quote some data that we have internally, is Sterling Resorts has witnessed a significant growth of people driving to our resorts to stay there. We're also seeing air travel, but people within a 5-6 hour time radius are actually driving in. So we're seeing this happen. Then there's enough evidence to show how Kashmir, the Andamans, Kerala, all these places are booming purely because people are able to get there far easier than they did in the past. Earlier, if an inbound tourist wanted to travel into Rajasthan, moving from city to city within Rajasthan was a challenge. Today, with the exception of maybe a city, I think everything is linked and there are enough flight options available. So I think domestic tourism is getting to another level. As far as inbound tourism is concerned, it was a little slow to start off earlier this year because essentially India is a long-haul destination out of Europe, out of the United Kingdom, out of the United States. And here, I think we have benefited from the rub-off effect of the G20, the visibility that India has gained over the last couple of years, that people are coming back to India. And all you need to go is walk into any hotel in Delhi. I witnessed it this morning. The place is full of tourists. So I think we're witnessing that recovery. Domestic tourism recovered long ago, but inbound tourism is seeing it. However, we need to ensure the sustainability of this. It's not enough to say, okay, we had a good year, let's not worry about it for the next 2 years. If you want to attract, and we know this from our businesses, that if you want to attract customers, you need to keep visibility. You need to be in their face, if I may use that word, to ensure that we sort of kindle that thought. The last thing I want to mention is people are taking holidays far more often than they did in the past. So all this reflects the fact that it is no longer about a flash in the pan, but it's a sustained trend that we are seeing, which is driven by change in consumer behavior. It's also being driven by the fact that people seem to have more spending power than they did in the past, and therefore, we'll see this growth for the next couple of years at least.
We have the industry representatives here, we have the government, representation here. So, one thing that comes to my mind is, how do you think the industry and government can partner? What are the areas that you can focus on, which would, ensure that, the growth of this trend? Because we've got the stage, set, but how to get it rolling? How do you think, the industry and government can benefit?
Look, I think there are people who are far more familiar with this than I am, but I think the government and industry have worked together. But you'll appreciate our objectives are slightly different. So while there is an overlap, The reality is each of us has got our own objectives. I would believe that as far as attracting tourism into India, the government could do more. Others will say that we as industry could do more. The reality is that all of us are governed to a large extent by factors which are beyond our control. I mean, look at, for example, the geopolitics, the Ukraine crisis, the crisis out of, in Israel, Gaza. The reality is that there are opportunities in this and there are problems with this. If you look at what's happened in the Middle East, tourism that was bound into Egypt, into some of the other countries in the Middle East is now diverting away, and India, I'm sure, is a beneficiary of that. If you look at the problems in Europe, yes, Europe has been slow to recover, but if I look at some of the other businesses that we have internationally, I'm beginning to see that flow come back in also. So the reality is, look, I think we're in a sweet spot, despite non-availability of seats, high airfares, higher hotel rates. It doesn't matter, but people are coming. Whether they're coming into India or they're visiting India as a transit point, it's the same. And I just want to mention that people are beginning to look at India and South Asia rather than just looking at India as a destination, which in my opinion is a good trend.
Yeah, that's interesting, because from globalization of the Middle East that it was seen as, but again, we're moving back to Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
here.
you. Thank you very
Next
much.
time.